$37,000. That is the national median price tag just to walk out of a hospital with a newborn. Now, add $66,000 a year for childcare and a village that has completely vanished. They call Gen Z and Millennials selfish for choosing to be child-free. But when the math for survival literally doesn't add up, is it a choice or a calculated retreat? The nuclear family is dying in real time, and the real reason why goes way deeper than just money. We're witnessing more than just a temporary dip in birth rates. It's a fundamental breakdown of the modern social contract. When the traditional milestones of adulthood are gated behind luxury-level paywalls, it forces an entire generation to redefine what a fulfilled life even looks like. This isn't just a trend, it's a survival pivot that's rewriting the rules of human connection. And if we don't look at the systemic rot underneath, we're missing the biggest cultural shift of our century. This survival pivot manifests most clearly when we look at the script we were all handed at birth. For generations, the trajectory was non-negotiable. Finish school, land a stable career, secure the mortgage, and inevitably start a family. It was the white picket fence ideal. A social baseline where having children was framed as the natural, almost automatic culmination of adulthood. We've been conditioned to believe that this path is not only desirable, but universally accessible, provided you just work hard enough. On the surface, the declining birth rate looks like a simple case of young people being too picky or prioritizing travel over tradition. We're told it's a phase, a delay, or perhaps just a collective bout of selfishness. But when you look past the Instagram travel reels and the aesthetic of double income no kids, you realize that the foundation this dream was built on has been quietly dismantled for decades, leaving us to build a home on shifting sand. But here's the plot twist we're all ignoring. The shifting sand isn't just about interest rates or housing bubbles. There's a much darker, more uncomfortable truth lurking under the surface that most people are terrified to say out loud. It's not just that the village is gone, it's that we've spent the last 50 years building a society that is fundamentally hostile to the very existence of children. We've traded communal support for a hyper-individualistic grind that treats a child's presence in a public space like a glitch in the simulation. The real secret? We aren't just delaying parenthood because of our bank accounts. We're opting out because we've realized the modern world expects us to raise the next generation in a state of total clinical isolation, and then has the audacity to call it freedom. And here is the punchline that makes this clinical isolation even more sinister. It isn't a design flaw, it's a business model. See, the nuclear family wasn't just a social experiment, it was the ultimate marketing pivot. When you dismantle the village, you create a vacuum that can only be filled by commodities. If you don't have a grandmother to watch the baby, you're forced to buy a $3,000 a month daycare slot. If you don't have a community safety net, you have to buy premium insurance for every what if. The truth we're finally waking up to is that the system doesn't actually want us to be supported, because a supported parent is a bad consumer. It needs us tired, alone, and desperate, because that is when we are most profitable. We aren't just opting out of parenthood. We are refusing to be the fuel for a machine that only functions when we are failing. Conventional wisdom frames this as a simple lifestyle preference, as if we're choosing a vacation over a toddler based on our weekend plans. We're told the solution is to just save more, treating parenthood like a luxury subscription service you only activate once you've reached a certain tax bracket. But that is the fatal flaw in the old guard logic. It treats a systemic collapse like a personal budgeting error. They look at us and see a lack of grit. We look at them and see a commodified village where the price of entry is permanent burnout. We aren't just delaying adulthood, we're exposing that the math of the American dream fails the second the cost of belonging becomes your total exhaustion. This exhaustion is where the core secret of the child-free movement finally reveals itself. We've realized that the fulfillment of parenthood has been rebranded as a high-end luxury status symbol, but the fine print says it's actually a life sentence to the corporate bottom line. The unfair advantage of choosing this path isn't just the extra cash in the bank. It's the radical reclamation of your own sovereignty. We are witnessing the first generation in history to collectively see through the ultimate psychological trap, the lie that you are incomplete until you've produced a new consumer for the machine. By opting out, we aren't just saving our credit scores. We are staging the ultimate protest against a system that demands we reproduce its workforce while offering zero infrastructure to support our humanity. Reclaiming your time isn't a lifestyle preference. It is the only way to stop being a voluntary subsidy for a world that expects you to burn out just to belong. But here is where the freedom of being child-free hits its most brutal, jagged edge. We think we're escaping the machine, but we're actually walking into a different kind of architectural isolation. Our entire societal infrastructure, from tax codes and healthcare proxies to the very way our neighborhoods are zoned, is a legacy system built exclusively for the nuclear unit. When you step outside that circle, you don't just gain autonomy, you become a ghost in the gears. There is no communal blueprint for a life that doesn't culminate in a traditional family. And that vacuum is terrifyingly easy for the world to weaponize against you. Because while you're busy reclaiming your sovereignty, the system is already calculating the exact moment your independence becomes your ultimate, inescapable liability. And that leads us to the one chilling realization that changes everything. That realization? We aren't the ones failing the system. The system has already failed us, and we've simply stopped pretending we can fix it with our own lives. For decades, the $37,000 hospital bills and the $66,000 childcare ransoms was sold to us as the cost of admission to a meaningful existence. But when you refuse to pay the ransom, the hostage taker loses all their power. The village didn't just vanish by accident. It was dismantled and sold back to us in pieces until we could no longer afford our own humanity. By stepping out of that cycle, we aren't just choosing ourselves in some shallow aesthetic way. We are ending a generational subsidy of a machine that only values us when we are reproducing its labor force. The ultimate catharsis isn't in finding a new system to join, but in the radical, bone-deep truth that your worth is not a byproduct of your biological output. You are not a half-formed person waiting for a child to complete your social contract. The white picket fence was never the goal. It was the perimeter. And once you stop fearing the architectural isolation of the old world, you realize that being a ghost in the gears is just another word for being the only thing the machine can't control. A person who is already whole. We aren't the tragic end of a lineage. We are the beginning of a life that finally, for the first time in history, belongs entirely to the person living it. This shift isn't just a trend. It's a collective exhale. For the first time, we're acknowledging that having it all was always a trap designed to keep us producing, consuming, and burning out in the dark. We are proving that a life lived for yourself isn't empty. It's simply the only life that isn't being lived for someone else's profit margin. You are the protagonist of your own story, not just a supporting character in a corporate-mandated legacy. And if the world sees that as a threat, let it. Because once you stop asking for permission to be happy with what you already have, the perimeter finally disappears. If you're navigating this weird, shifting landscape of modern adulthood with me, drop a comment below and tell me, what does your white picket fence look like now that you know you don't have to build one? Let's keep this conversation going.